often folks will threaten, well, I'm going to call my lawyer, and the other person backs down. They're bullies.
Yeah.
I've seen employers do it to employees. I've seen employees do it to an employer.
Yeah.
Because they don't know your rights. And we have a saying we like that says, if you don't know your rights, you might as well not have any.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy our cup of coffee. Today's conversation is going to be around the practicality of legal advice. And before we get too much into that conversation, I want to ask you to do something. If you haven't already, subscribe. It's pretty easy and it's free. I don't even think that we've mentioned that before. It's absolutely free to subscribe. All you have to do is click the button. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, make sure you hit the like or follow button and make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. If you're listening to the audio version of this, somebody has sent it to you and you say, hey, what is this about? Make sure you subscribe on whatever platform you're on. We have a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. about business ideas, practices, and strategies that are applicable to you as a business leader, as anyone that is working as an employee or in the business world at all. Practical information that will be beneficial to you. So we ask you to subscribe and share it if you think of somebody else that you know of that would get some value out of the conversation today. Our guest is Sheryl Scott. She comes from Canada, and she's going to be talking a little bit about practical, proactive legal advice and legal things that you need to be focused on from a personal perspective or from a small business perspective. So make sure you grab a cup of coffee and get ready for this conversation.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, Sheryl, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We're just sitting here chatting about Canada. So you're in Canada. Tell me a little bit about kind of where you're located, because I was just telling you, for me, for a long period of time, Canada was just up there. So where about are you in Canada?
I'm in a tiny town called Plattsville, population about 800.
Oh, wow.
Very small. Yeah, we've got a hardware store that also sells liquor, but we don't have a gas station or a grocery store.
Oh, wow.
So it takes a little getting used to, but we're just outside of Kitchener-Waterloo, which you probably also haven't heard of, although we do have 2 universities and a college there, so it's well known for that.
Okay.
And Kitchener, normally outside of COVID, interesting fun fact, hosts the second largest Oktoberfest in the world, next to Munich, Germany.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a fun fact.
It is. Yeah. So hopefully next year we'll get back to normal. And I'm about an hour and a half west of Toronto.
Okay. Now there is
most people know where that is.
Yeah, most people know where Toronto is, or at least close to it. And now I've heard of a town in upstate New York called Plattsburgh. So no correlation. Okay, cool.
Don't think so.
Let's jump into it. Rapid fire, 5 randomly selected questions just to get under your skin with unknown point values, and we'll give you a score at the end. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. Number 1, what is your favorite holiday?
Christmas.
Christmas. Why is that?
Because it lasts the longest.
That's funny. I've never heard anybody give that type of an answer, but yes, it does last. I mean, we're effectively into it right now.
Yeah, I mean, so many holidays we don't even decorate for, and Halloween's kind of come and gone in a couple of days, maybe a weekend. Christmas, at least, you put up the decorations in November, and heck, some of us keep them up all the way till Valentine's.
I've told this story a few times before, but I think it was either our first or second year of marriage. We had a small little house, but the living room was kind of tucked away out of the corner, and we rarely hung out in there because, we were young married couples and we were always kind of doing stuff. And we left our Christmas tree up until I think March, just because, why not? All right.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? All right. Question number 2. What is your go-to TV show to watch at night?
Depends on my mood. But White Collar is one of my absolute favorites.
White Collar. Is that a Netflix show?
Actually, I don't know where it is now.
Oh.
I haven't watched it in ages.
Oh, all right.
It was Netflix.
It was Netflix. All right. Let's see here. Beach holiday or a ski trip?
Beach holiday.
Really? So when you go on to a beach holiday, where is that for you?
Caribbean.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair enough. Fair.
Yeah, if we were skiing, maybe we'd be in Canada.
Yes, exactly.
Likely not in Ontario, though.
All right. Question number 4. What is something that you accomplished as part of a team?
Oh, currently, my husband and I and a friend who also happens to be a contractor and another friend who happens to be an electrician are renovating our 175-year-old house.
Wow. 175
Isn't fully accomplished yet, but we're about halfway.
That's a big task. 175.
And COVID just made it slower and cost more.
Oh,
but that's okay.
I can imagine. I can imagine. All right. Last question. What simple food would you never eat?
Parsnips.
Parsnips.
Mm-hmm.
Great answer. Great answer. Okay. We're going to give you a score 796. So congratulations there.
Out of
parsnips. And that just you just click. I don't even know that parsnips was in my anywhere close to my mindset. That's awesome. Okay.
Well, there's lots of things you can disguise or cover up with sauce or gravy or ketchup, and parsnips. No, there's just no killing that taste.
All right, let's jump into the conversation. So we're going to kind of wrap this conversation today around proactive legal advice. I think that's as we were chatting before we started recording, that was one of the things that you mentioned, and I found that to be very interesting concept. So, as from a small business owner's perspective, thinking proactively around what do I need to be prepared for from a legal perspective, because I can tell you from perspective, from experience, when you start talking about lawyers and legal and it comes to business, it's like, let's steer clear of that. It's going to cost us a lot. It's time consuming. I'm at a disadvantage because I don't, when I'm talking to a lawyer, I'm not exactly sure of all the things. So it's finding somebody that you trust, somebody that's not going to cost a fortune, and then actually make sure you get things done. And I would assume, and I don't like to assume, but I would assume a lot of small business owners over time just kind of push that off because of all of those various reasons of, no, I don't want to deal with it. It's too complicated. It's an unknown, and I just don't want to deal with the frustration around it. So, from your perspective, obviously, you're talking with small business owners quite regularly. Where do you see that, and is that just a story that I made up on my own, or is that something that you're seeing across the board with other business owners?
No, that happens with a lot of business owners. Although I would say a greater reason why they don't use lawyers is cost. Okay. And they don't know what they don't know, particularly startup or prospective business owners. Often, and I think I mentioned my background is as a career coach, and I was working as a career coach during the last recession in 2008-9. And the number of people that said, if I don't get a job quickly, I'll just hang out a shingle and be self-employed. I'm a really good plumber, electrician, carpenter, whatever the case may be. And it's like, well, that's great. You know all about plumbing. What the heck do you know about starting and running a business? It's not that simple. Yeah. There's other considerations. You need an A team of people behind you if you don't have that expertise. You need an accountant. You need a lawyer. You need a financial advisor so that you don't fall into all the pitfalls and end up out of business just because you didn't know what you didn't know.
Yeah. So that concept that you're talking about from being a practitioner and being a really good practitioner and then trying to flip the switch over to operating a business and walking into those unknown unknowns, the things that you just didn't even have on your radar, like parsnips, right? Like I not even thinking about that, but all of a sudden here it is, and now I've got to deal with it. So what do I do to deal with it?
Talk to an expert. If it is not in your wheelhouse, find somebody whose wheelhouse it is. And that goes for legal, but also other things as well. Taxes, for instance, you've got to have a good accountant, right? I mean, you can kind of muddle through, but you're going to miss stuff. You're going to miss write-offs. You're going to end up paying more, almost guaranteed. Yes, you may know you've got a legal issue and maybe it's little now, but if you don't deal with it, it's only going to get bigger and then it's going to cost more. So when I talk about proactive use of legal services, it's not that you even feel like you need them. It's the fact that you can get questions answered, information verified, or documents and contracts reviewed before you sign them so that you know exactly what's going on. So you can have that expert explain it to you, go over the pros and cons. Many, many times people, launch into a business and think that they have to incorporate. They don't. There's pros and cons to that. There's a couple reasons why you might. One is shielding yourself personally from liability and protecting your assets. The other one is tax reasons, but it doesn't make sense for every business out there. And in the States, it gets even a little more complicated because you've got multiple types of incorporation.
Sure.
Up here, it's a little simpler. You're either incorporated or you're not. But it doesn't make sense for everybody.
Yeah.
And yes, we can go Google stuff. Who has time to spend hours on Google because there's just a myriad of information? And then how do you verify that, A, it's current, especially with COVID, everything's changing, feels like minute by minute. And how do you make sure that it's valid for your state or province, right? Friend of ours has some rental units. He owns a couple triplexes, and he had a lawyer look over his rental agreement that he downloaded off the internet. It was supposedly a standard agreement. And they said, it's a good thing that your tenants didn't know this, but clause number 4 is actually illegal here in Ontario. Where the heck did you get this from? He's like, off the internet. You're like, yeah, this is probably for the U.S.
Yeah. We understand the frustrations HOA board members and property managers face when deciding the best solution for their HOA and pool security. Should we use a keypad, hand out keys, or install a key card system? Do we even need cameras? These are some of the questions that are difficult to navigate, and we're here to help. At Loc-Doc Security, we've spent over 20 years working with homeowners associations and property managers to find the system that best fits the pool and HOA needs. Camera systems for the front gate or front entrance, key card systems for the pool gates, or simply updating the gate so that it meets safety and code compliance. We like to take the guesswork out of the process to answer any questions and help find the right solution. Our mission is to help you protect your people and your property, and that includes pools. Contact our team today to schedule your free consultation for your community. I'm unpacking a couple of these things because I know in our business, we have some folks on staff that read contracts are a big thing now, right? So we're constantly having to review new contracts, dealing with customer contracts and all that, vendor contracts, vendor agreements, and everything else. I also recently saw a thread online in kind of a small business conversation with practitioners, right? And they had made mention that they had been in their particular industry for a number of decades, and they have never had to deal with contracts. And so they had a new customer that sent them a contract and said, in order for you to do business with us, you've got to sign this, some 20-page contract. And their response to that was, you can take that and do what you want with it, but I'm not dealing with contracts. And the reason that I bring it up is I think that maybe a couple of factors. One of that is, one, I don't have time to sit and read a contract. And even if I did, what am I reading? The whereas is to such as, therefore, all that type of stuff. And now I'm just kind of overwhelmed and bogged down. But the flip of all that is, because of, one, my hesitation, two, my lack of desire to understand it, or maybe just I don't have the capability to comprehend it right now, is going to take a business opportunity away from me because I'm not going to sign something, one, that I don't understand, and two, I don't have the wherewithal to kind of process and understand it right now. So therefore, it's a limitation of growth or advancement for your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where a lawyer can be really helpful. But most people don't want to pay $200, $300, $400 just to have a contract reviewed. Now, if it turns out there's something in there, some red flags, and, they shouldn't even be signing it, well, then it's probably worth it. But when the lawyer just says, yeah, no, everything's fine, here's what it means, you feel like that's a whole lot of not wasted money, but not necessarily well spent money.
Sure. So with that, you mentioned this, you mentioned lawyers, you mentioned accountants, financial advisor, all of those types of things are things that you want to have when you're growing a business, when you're starting a business. Maybe you've already started a business and now you got to kind of backtrack on some of those things. With that, I think a lot of people that I've had conversations with, they will typically have one of those kind of three staples, and then that one staple will refer them to the others. They all kind of have their network of people that they refer to. The question is because ultimately you can, we already mentioned Google, you can Google business lawyer or business legal advice or whatever, and you're going to get just tons and tons and tons of results. So where do I even start with that? So finding a trusted source and a trusted network, because that's where kind of what you're trying to find, right, is somebody to kind of a starting point where I don't have to process a lot. And we use this term a lot around here. I've got to burn too many calories to process this and think through this. So where can I go that it's going to make it easy for me to kind of do that right thing or choose the right support system? So tell me a little bit. Obviously, you've got LegalShield on your background there. So obviously, that's a thing. Explain to us a little bit what LegalShield is and why that kind of situation helps, or does it help with that situation?
Absolutely, yeah. So, in terms of just finding experts in general, I would say ask other business owners, successful business owners, because part of the reason they're successful is they've got that A team of experts behind them. Mm-hmm. So that's a good place to start. LegalShield is an amazing resource for those that don't want to pay high price or can't afford the typical hourly rate of lawyers, because you don't want there is no such thing as a bargain basement lawyer, and B, even if there was, it's not what you would want. Right? The wealthy few can afford to keep a law firm on retainer.
Yeah.
The very poorest of the poor sometimes have access to government-funded legal services, but I know here in Ontario, you've got to practically be starving to death before you can even afford it, and it's very limited.
Sure.
I suspect it's the same most places. So LegalShield was created to serve everybody else in between, families and businesses alike, which is a huge population. Mm-hmm. It is a monthly subscription. So it's a crowd sharing model, very similar to AAA in the United States or CAA in Canada, right? A whole parking lot full of cars. All those car owners may have AAA. Mm-hmm. They're not all going to use it on one day.
Sure.
Ours is similar. All of our, however many millions of members we have at the moment, all pay a small monthly membership fee. They're not all going to use it every day.
Yeah.
Some might. Many of our family members only use it to get their wills and powers of attorney written and update it periodically every couple of years.
Yeah.
The rest of it is just in case.
Yeah.
A big portion of our membership is like insurance. It's more reactive. We hope we don't get speeding tickets.
Yeah.
We hope we're not going to get audited on our taxes. We hope we're not going to go through a nasty divorce, or have children and family services show up at the door, or be in some sort of accident or get sued. So that's very proactive. You want it just in case.
Yep.
And that's where the wealthy few keep that lawyer on retainer just in case. Most of us can't afford to do that. The nice thing about LegalShield is we also get what the wealthy few get, and that's that proactiveness. You can ask questions, get information verified, have documents and contracts reviewed, get your wills and powers of attorney written ahead of time, prenuptial agreements, all of that sort of stuff to maybe avoid all those things that we normally think of as being legal situations.
Yeah.
People tell me all the time, I don't need a lawyer. I'm a good person. Yeah, but bad things happen to good people, and good people can be in the wrong place at the wrong time and mistaken for a bad person.
Sure.
It happens. Those TV movies don't come from nothing. Those ideas come from somewhere.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'm just trying to think through this, the processing, because I know from our perspective, over the years as we've had to engage with different business lawyers for different things, it can cost anywhere between, $200 $2,000, $3,000 to $6,000, $7,000 just for kind of a single contract write-up or a process. So it can be costly the more frequently that you use them. And so having kind of that crowdsourcing option, it can definitely be a benefit. Now that's $2,000 to $7,000 in Canadian. That's like $5,000 to $10,000, right?
Oh, at least, yes. At least. And so LegalShield for a small business starts as low as $45 a month.
There you go. Interesting.
Our biggest package for a company that's got a couple hundred employees, as an example, is only $169 a month. So they're going to save a ton of money.
Yeah.
On the family side, it starts at $30 a month, and it includes all areas of law, like anything you could possibly think of. And the only thing that we pay extra, our members pay extra for out of pocket, is where you would need to hire a lawyer to go to court for you or with you.
Sure.
And it's going to be extensive. So nasty custodies and divorces.
Yeah.
Lawsuits outside of civil court.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have some civil trial time included.
Yeah.
But if it's some other kind of a trial, then that's extra. Criminal cases, those would cost extra, but you still get a 25% discount, I've never been through a criminal trial, knock on wood, hope to never be, but I have several friends who've been through divorce, and the cheapest one I've heard of so far was $80,000.
Yeah.
25% of $80,000, that's a decent chunk of money.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of times we get kind of into that big stuff, right? The things that we're really stressed about. I can tell you from experience here recently, there's been a few situations just looking at kind of family estate planning or family estate questions that, again, you can spend hours and hours and hours searching online on Google to try to find the answers and still kind of lack the clarity of this is actually what needs to happen. And having access to somebody like that can say, hey, here's the situation. What's the next steps, or where do I need to go? Having somebody to a trusted advisor basically to bounce that off of is huge at a reasonable rate, because I can even on that, pricing that out, it's close to $2,000 just to get somebody to say, hey, here's what you need to do. And so, from even what you're just saying there on an individual family plan, that definitely helps to get you down the path in a lot more reasonable expectation.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then you can use it for so much more. There's lots of things that we don't think of as being legal situations.
Yeah.
Personally or business wise, our phone companies overcharging us $5 a month. They keep forgetting to give us that bundle discount or loyalty discount or whatever it is. And you call them and they say, oh, we'll credit it on the next bill. And they do, but there it is again.
Yeah.
And so you're phoning them every month. That's a horrible waste of time. Mm-hmm. Whereas you could call the law firm, they write a letter, solved.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's amazing. Legal muscle goes a long way. I've also had business owners that have used it for help with collections. And it's as simple as writing a collection letter, and yet they'd already had collection letters from a collection agency that did no good.
Yeah.
And suddenly it's coming from a high-powered law firm. People pay attention.
Yeah.
It's interesting. And to your point about not knowing who to like and trust, to open the yellow pages or just Google, how do you know which one is good, bad, and ugly?
Yeah.
Well, ask other business owners. But our LegalShield lawyers, we've got one primary law firm in every state or province, and they have been vetted like it took years.
Sure. So
you're getting top quality lawyers. The average tenure of the lawyers within those firms is 20 years. Like they're not newbies, they're not paralegals, and they're certainly not students.
Can you copy this key? That's a question we get asked about 3,422 times a year. And how can you actually be sure that the person who asked that question is supposed to get a copy of that key? Well, we think you should always know who can copy your keys to your business and your home, because it could be your neighbor, an old employee, a contractor, or even worse, your mother-in-law. At Loc-Doc Security, we believe in protected key systems, so you always know who has a copy of your key. To find out more, visit locdoc.net or stop by our Charlotte location. Loc-Doc Security, helping you protect your people and your property. So effectively what LegalShield is, like you said, a crowdsourced retainer for for quality law firms.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
So our members benefit. Our lawyers love it because most of them became lawyers because they want to help people. And that's all they have to do is help people. They don't have to worry about keeping track of billable items, like how many faxes and emails did I send? How many minutes was I on the phone? Or worry about going and getting new clients because we're already their biggest.
Sure. So what are some other, because I want to really talk on the proactive side of some proactive legal advice or proactive legal things that we need to be focused on. I know we mentioned a will. It is surprising, and I think that all of us probably think about it when something happens or way too late. So let's talk a little bit about that, but also talk a little bit about other proactive legal elements that as business owners or as individuals that we need to be mindful of that we can start taking action on.
Yeah, wills and powers of attorney, or they have other names in different places, living wills and things, but so important. I mean, they are the last love letter to your family. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we hope we're going to live forever. The interesting challenge right now is I talk to younger folks. They don't even know what the heck a will and a power of attorney is because they haven't had to deal with no one close to them has died yet because everyone's living so much longer, right? And that's typically when those conversations come up, is following a funeral. Mm-hmm. And so we need to be thinking about these things. And as business owners, I mean, what if, yes, there's death. Well, you're dead, so what are you going to care? But what if you fall into a coma and you come out of a coma? You had nothing in place in terms of your business. The brother-in-law you hate stepped up and said, oh, I'll be happy to help out. And he runs it into the ground. You come out of your coma and you got nothing left.
Brother-in-laws, I tell you.
One thing I have learned over the years, even before LegalShield, death and money brings out personalities in people we've never seen, and will even bring out relatives we didn't know existed, which may or may not even be legitimate relatives. Again, those made-for-TV movies, they get those ideas from somewhere.
Exactly.
Some other proactive ideas, should you incorporate? If so, when? What kind of incorporation? Now you're suddenly growing. You want to hire some people. Should they be employees or should they be contract workers? Very different scenarios, both for you and the staff member. And again, pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
And if they start out as contract workers, when should they become employees? Right? Sooner or later, the government's thinking you're just doing that to avoid taxes and paying into some of the other government benefits, right?
Yeah.
There's certain things you need to do. Do you need special insurance for whatever business you're thinking of? People often think, I could just start a business from my home, no big deal. Well, and it's not necessarily. I mean, you're not dealing with commercial landlord and tenant issues. But yeah, what about special insurance?
Yeah.
What about, I'm going to put up a website. Well, you need privacy policies in terms of use, and what the heck should they say? And now with COVID, another good example would be folks that are unfortunately getting displaced from the workplace. Mm-hmm. Well, if it's a wrongful dismissal situation, you've got to deal with a lawyer, because how do you even know if it really is?
Yeah.
And if you've gotten a severance package, you should not sign that without somebody looking at it, because you could be entitled to more and you don't even know.
Gotcha.
And then when you go to get a new job these days, and for a lot of jobs, there's an employment contract, a non-competition agreement, a non-disclosure agreement. And now all of these things also have these crazy COVID clauses that, as you pointed out, are written in legalese that we may or may not understand.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll give a few different examples. A small business owner in the United States this past summer went to purchase a new vehicle.
Okay.
And they said, sign here and we'll give you the keys. He said, no, I'm going to have my lawyer look this over before I sign it. I'll pick the car up in a couple days. What? It's a standard agreement. Mm-hmm. He says, yeah, but it doesn't cost me anything. So why wouldn't I? Well, the lawyers looked it over and he found almost $600 in frivolous fees that did not need to be there. I said, cross those out, initial beside them, give it back to the sales manager, see what he says. Sales guy looks and goes, wow, you're on the ball. Okay. saved almost $600 that he can now put towards his small business.
Sure.
That's huge. That can be huge savings. It's not always about what we make. It's about what we can save.
Yeah.
Often. And so anywhere you can cut costs is terrific, but you don't want to cut costs at the expense of service or product, right?
Yeah.
There's that old saying, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And it is true. But cost sharing is just the way to go these days.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, Netflix, there's a good example. There are still folks using cable, but I don't know why.
No, it's a valid point. I like the concept of cost sharing and crowdsourcing, and we've kind of had that conversation. But the cost sharing where a lot of people pay a smaller fee to get access to something that they would normally be a premium. So it's definitely a valid, concept. So a couple of kind of takeaways there: wills, powers of attorneys, understanding when to incorporate, when to not. Employee versus contractor type discussions, understanding requirements for insurance based off of the type of business that you're in, privacy policies for websites, knowing when those types of things need to be implemented, and employment contracts, and kind of understanding the aspects of that. I mean, just that alone, those are some common things that a lot of people don't take into consideration, but at the same point can cost you a lot on the back end if you just let it slide.
Absolutely. And one we haven't even touched on is taxes. You open a business. Well, okay, is that now just extra forms on my personal taxes, or do I have to file separately? What if I'm doing businesses in multiple states and provinces and I'm charging tax, but the tax is different in those states? Do I charge according to my province or their state, or how does that even work? And yeah, it can get pretty darn complicated. And is there any exceptions to tax laws? Up here in Canada, we've got GST in Ontario, and it's not supposed to be on essential items. Well, that list of essential items is not logical.
Yeah.
As far as I know, maraschino cherries are still on that list.
Well, I mean, it could be essential.
But women's sanitary items are not.
Oh, well.
Where's the logic in that? So you can't. What is that? What they say about if you assume you're making an ass of you and me?
Yeah.
Yeah. You never want to assume anything. You're starting out in business, you pick a name. How do you know that name doesn't belong to somebody already?
Yeah.
And how do you then prevent somebody else from stealing it?
Yep. There you go. Yeah, those are, and all of those things that you just described, besides the maraschino cherries, but besides that are definitely conversations that we've had. How do we identify that this is a name? How is it trademarked? How is it, how do you go through that process? And again, you sit down with a lawyer and they say, well, before we even have the conversation, let's go ahead and sign this, which is going to be a $2,000 retainer. And then we can even listen to what you're going to say. Right. So yeah, all of those things are there and are real. And it can add up as unexpected cost for the business. So looking at something like this, it's more of a fixed budgetable number that you can have on hand and then have access to that.
Right. And so we can pretend like we're the wealthy few and literally not do anything without talking to a lawyer first.
Yeah.
Because there are consequences to everything. And where we may only see one option, there could be multiple options we're just not aware of.
So I want to kind of put it in this context because I'm going to talk very kind of real on this. I think a lot of people, and I'm talking some of myself here, a lot of people in a role kind of growing and leading a business don't, especially in a aggressive growth process, are probably very risk aware, but they are not risk averse, right? So they're risk takers. And so when you talk to a lawyer, the lawyer is always risk averse because that's what they do is they're kind of being mindful of here are all the risks that need to be laid out. And I think a lot of times entrepreneurs, business owners that are trying to do those types of things are navigating, and probably less on the assumptive nature, but more on the optimistic nature of let's just go get this done and don't really worry about the risk side of it. And so I would say that, and I'm kind of saying this to myself as well, having the somebody there that can help mitigate risk and have them on standby to say, okay, here's all the positives. Now you tell me all the issues is a good thing to bounce off, because I would imagine a lot of business owners, especially in that entrepreneurial mindset, get themselves into situations unnecessarily or unintentionally because the risk never occurred to them, and so that's having somebody like that would be a very huge value.
Absolutely. And anytime you're dealing with people, so the minute you start hiring folks, no matter in what regard, things start to get a little interesting.
Yeah,
for sure. And often folks will threaten, well, I'm going to call my lawyer, and the other person backs down. They're bullies.
Yeah.
I've seen employers do it to employees. I've seen employees do it to an employer.
Yeah.
Because they don't know your rights. And we have a saying we like that says, if you don't know your rights, you might as well not have any. Because what's the point?
Yeah.
But for someone in business starting out or deciding whether to get into business, to be able to just say, hey, I'm thinking of starting a private plumbing company out of my garage. What do I need to know and what do I need to do? Like, it could be just that simple of a question that's going to lead to so much information. And the odds of them, succeeding are going to be greater because they're going to avoid those pitfalls.
Sure. No, that's valid advice. Well, Sheryl, I appreciate the conversation today. It's obviously made me think a lot, and I think anybody that's listening needs to kind of take heed on some of those things as well. If they want to find out more about LegalShield and find out more about how they can do that, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you and make sure that they can use you as a resource?
Well, I will give you my phone number, 519-590-1115. Now, there is a chat box. Would the viewers be able to see that?
On our virtual meeting?
On the platform, yeah.
Yeah. No, not right now. They won't.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, then I won't bother putting it there.
And if they go to LegalShield, and is there a way that they can sign up there and put in a code for you, or do they need to contact you first?
There is. I'll be honest, technology, it's not at the top of the list, that particular item, so it doesn't necessarily always work.
Okay.
But they can try it. My name is Sheryl with an S. Sheryl. Last name is Scott with 2 T's. But it truly is easier if they contact me first, especially as a business owner. Mm-hmm. For families, we have one legal plan. Easy peasy.
Gotcha.
For businesses, we have a choice of 4.
Okay.
And it's way easier for me to just ask a few questions and narrow it down rather than them read through the myriads of information and then just be confused.
Gotcha.
So it really is easier to reach out to me. So again, that number is 519-590-1115. You can phone or text. And I just need to know your state or province, and then I can help figure out what's going to meet your needs, because you also don't want to overpay.
Sure, most
definitely. And have more than you need.
Hey, Sheryl, thank you for joining us today. It was great information and something that we can all take and apply in our own businesses and our own personal lives as well. From experience, a will is definitely a great thing to have, and go ahead and get that taken care of. Don't push that off. It can definitely help your loved ones down the road. Again, those of you who are joining us, please make sure you subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, make sure you hit the like and follow button and subscribe, because we've got a brand new episode every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. and we don't want you to miss out on a single one. So the best way to do that is to subscribe. We'll see you next time right here on the Coffee Break Podcast.